Hi, I'm Jonathan Long with the Reston Church of Christ. Thank you so much for joining us today. What we're going to talk about today is we're actually going to talk about a pretty morbid subject. We're going to talk about death. We've in our church actually here recently, we've had more than I would like of people that have passed from this life, and it's caused us a little bit of time for reflection. Sometimes we get to the end of our lives and we are hesitant, we're scared. We're maybe a little bit having a fear of the unknown. Even though we're confident in our salvation that we're going to be in heaven, it's that taking that step into the unknown that sometimes is really, really frightening. Sometimes we get a little scared of maybe dying and passing from this life, spending our last days ungracefully. Sometimes we're worried about dying unprepared. Sometimes we worry about what our reputation is when we leave this world. We want to know, did I really make a difference? And along with the series that we've been doing, we're going to talk about no man died like Jesus. And so I'd like to just share a couple of things with you as you're reflecting maybe on your faith, maybe as you're having conversations with people, that this might be useful to you to recognize that there was no one else on the earth like Jesus Christ, and no one died like him. And the first way we see that is that nobody died like Jesus, because when he died, there were supernatural signs that occurred whenever he died. In Colossians chapter 1, it's all about the preeminence of Christ and that he is the creator and the upholder of everything. And at the moment of his death, it almost seemed like everything was going to give way. There was darkness on the earth. The earth shook. There were rocks that split in half. It seemed like all of creation, the entire universe, was about to fall apart at the moment that Jesus was hanging on the cross and he dies. And there's no one else that when they died, that the earth and the universe gave that type of response. But also when Jesus died, he bore the guilt of all mankind. And Isaiah chapter 53 and verse 6, it's a prophecy that's made about the Messiah's death. It says that the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. And 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 21, Paul says that it was for our sake that God made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. Jesus, when he died, he didn't just die for himself. He didn't just die because of what he had done, like you and I do. When we die, we're guilty of sin, and sin deserves death. But Jesus died for us, and he took the guilt of our sin. Jesus endured the wrath of God for us. When we sin, ultimately, a price needs to be paid. We do something eternal, and something eternal needs to happen in the payment for that in order for God to continue to be a just God. And Romans chapter 2 and verse 5 kind of alludes to this, that whenever we continue sinning, that we store up wrath for the day of judgment. And we see Jesus taking that for us when he went to the cross, and when he cries out, Matthew chapter 27 verse 46, my God, why have you forsaken me? Well, you just see part of that wrath of God that Jesus endures for us. One of the ways that Jesus died that no one else died is that he had the power to save himself. We were talking about earlier, Colossians 1 and 16, that all things were created by him in heaven and on earth. Jesus had the power to speak and to come off of the cross if he wanted to. But in John chapter 10 and verse 18, he says, no one takes it from me. He's talking about his life, but I lay it down of my own accord. Jesus had the power to prevent himself from ever having to suffer death. You and I can work out a lot. We can eat healthy. We can take a lot of supplements. We can get our vaccines. We can wear our masks. But ultimately, we're not going to evade death. Jesus was the only one that's ever walked this earth that did not have to go to the grave, that had the power in and of himself to avoid it. And he chose to do it for us. And part of that, Jesus' death was planned. He's praying. He says, my soul is troubled, and what shall I say? Save me from this hour. For this hour, for this cause, I came into the world. He describes that his whole purpose was coming so that he could die. It was part of the plan from before the foundations of the earth. It was prophesied about him hundreds of years before that was his purpose, to come and die. And I think the last thing, and probably the most important thing, is that Jesus' death brings life to us. Because of ourselves, what we're deserving of is death. Romans chapter 3 and verse 23, we've all fallen short of the glory of God. And Romans 6:23, and that deserves death. But in 1 John 5:11, the testimony that God gives us is that God has given us eternal life, and the life is in his Son. He who has the Son has life. Paul says that if Jesus wasn't resurrected from the death, if resurrected from the grave, if he wasn't capable of bringing us life, then our preaching and our faith would be useless. And I would implore you to look at your life and to examine it. There's no other person on the planet that has ever died the way that Jesus died, that ever endured what Jesus endured. So why would I follow after the pattern of anybody else? We may not do it intentionally, but whenever we don't follow the patterns that God leaves for us in his word, we're choosing to follow somebody else. I would challenge you to follow the pattern of the person that no one else died like on this entire planet. Thank you so much for joining with us. We hope to hear from you. Give us a like, share, subscribe. Until next time, we'll see you then.